Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Many of you may be familiar with our mission at Lancaster County Health Department, which is to protect and promote the public's health. The work we do every day helps protect our community, and a great example of this is the Safe Kids program. If you're a parent, you most likely heard of Safe Kids. Safe Kids at the local, state, and national level is a go-to resource for families and communities about information and tools that help protect children from injuries and keep them safe. Unintentional injuries have been and continue to be a leading cause of death and disability to children 14 years of age and younger across the nation. The Health Department led the effort to establish the Safe Kids Coalition in Lancaster County in 1995. Today, we partner with more than 70 local organizations to help prevent childhood injuries through the work of the coalition. The coalition is comprised of 6 task forces that address priority injury areas, and these include child passenger safety, pedestrian and bicycle safety, fire and burn prevention, water safety, home safety, and sports injury prevention, which leads us to why we're here today. The popularity of youth sports requires us as a responsible community to ensure young athletes are as safe as possible. Nationally, about 30 million youth participate annually in sports. Over 22,000 youth athletes are represented on the 5 youth sports organizations partnering with Safe Kids, with a total estimate of around 50,000 participants each year. Nationally, an average of 3.5 million youth sports injuries are treated yearly by medical professionals. Many, if not most, of these injuries are preventable. Today, we are joined by members of the Safe Kids Sports Injury Prevention Task Force to launch some valuable new resources for local youth sports organizations, coaches, and families to reduce the risk of injury to their athletes. The resources focus on the leading causes of youth sports injuries: concussion, overuse injury, and dehydration. Our task force members will provide more details on the development of these user-friendly resources and why they are a must-have for every member of our youth sports community. Starting us off will be Task Force Co-Chair Dr. Mike Stutz, Associate Professor in Athletic Training at Nebraska Wesleyan University. Following Mark will be Task Force Co-Chair Dr. Natalie Ronshagen, Sports Medicine Physician at Children's Hospital and Medical Center in Omaha. And next will be Task Force members Ricardo Niola, President of Dreamers FC Soccer, and then Brian Vanis, President of Lincoln Sox Baseball. Thanks to you and the other task force members who aren't here today for your contributing knowledge and expertise on this project. Now I'll turn the podium over to Dr. Stutz.
Thank you, Director Lopez, and thank you for all of you that are here today and are watching online. For the past 5 years plus, I have had the privilege of serving on the Sports Injury Prevention Task Force, with the past 2 years as either chair and currently as co-chair. When I was first approached about serving on the Safe Kids Task Force, I was impressed with its focus on preventing and reducing injuries in youth sports, and I gladly joined the task force. As I believed, and I still believe this today, this is a worthy cause to pursue. You see, as an athletic training educator, as a practicing athletic trainer, and researcher, I've spent more than 20 years researching and speaking on this exact topic. Besides this shared focus, I was also impressed with the involvement of the members of the Lancaster County community and saw the support that this task force had. And as they say, this was a perfect match. I'm passionate about the topics of preventing concussion, dehydration, and overuse injuries in youth athletes because I know that many of these can linger and even cause issues for children as they age. I want to express my appreciation for the commitment that each of the organizations and individuals has made so that we can help together keep our community safe, especially our young athletes, that we can help keep them injury-free and minimize the impact that might have on them as they do age and grow older. The purpose of our project that we're introducing today is to provide youth sport organizations, both recreational and competitive, their families, and the youth athletes themselves with best practices and resources on preventing sports-related injuries to young athletes. The leading causes of youth sports injuries are concussion, overuse injuries, and dehydration. And as I mentioned earlier, those are the focus of our task force. We, along with launching this, we have our promotion efforts through the Lincoln Journal-Star. We have a social media campaign, and we have technical assistance that we are providing to the different youth sport organizations. One of the ways we're doing this is through an electronic toolkit, which we have housed on the Safe Kids website, which is safekidslincoln.org. And specifically, if you click on the link with the sports icon, you'll be taken to the website where you'll find a lot of resources there to help parents, coaches, and directors of organizations. Included in that are handouts, there's videos on specific topics like I've mentioned, as well as links to our partner website with Children's Hospital that will be talked about in a little bit. Again, I just want to express my gratitude to all of the organizations that are listed that have helped with this, and those that are not here today speaking but do serve on the task force. All of the help's been very valuable, and we're really excited about launching our initiative. And now I'd like to introduce my colleague and co-chair, Dr. Natalie Ronshagen.
Thank you, Dr. Stutz. So my name is Dr. Natalie Ronshagen. I'm a sports medicine physician through Children's Hospital and Medical Center, and I have had the honor of being one of the co-chairs for this task force. I am a sports medicine physician, and I am a former athlete. And through all of that, I have come to recognize the true value of youth sports. We know that young athletes are less likely to get into trouble in school. They're more likely to have good grades, and they're also more likely to have healthy relationships growing up. Unfortunately, with youth sports, there's also the risk of injury, which is where I come in, and this task force comes in. And we have been tasked with coming up with a good way to help prevent sports injuries and to treat sports injuries most effectively in our youth athletes. In the college and high school arena, we have the benefit of having an athletic trainer on the sidelines. They're a medical professional who can triage, put ice on the things that need ice, send people to the emergency room who need to go to the emergency room, and brush off the dirt for the kids who can go back in safely. But in youth sports, we don't have that benefit. We have limited resources and amazing coaches, but oftentimes they're not medical professionals. So in this task force, we put together as many resources as we possibly could, including a coach's manual and coach's training course. I utilized the task force themselves to help me understand what we need in this course, as well as the sports medicine team at Children's Hospital and Medical Center to develop a comprehensive course that is accessible to the layperson. It is also free, which I think should be reiterated. This is something we want everybody to understand how to utilize and be able to find it and use it if they can. So it's specially made for coaches, but parents can use it, athletes can use it, anybody who is interested in more information on sports injuries. We cover concussions, we cover overuse injuries, and we even look at things like your athlete with diabetes. What do you do? How do you keep them safe? So it's a pretty comprehensive course. We are really wanting to be a resource for safe athletics so that every kid has the opportunity to play sports in a safe way so they can benefit from it the way I have and so many kids across this state have. Next, I'm going to pass the microphone and the podium over to Ricardo Noyola. He is the president of the Dreamers FC Soccer Club and has been really helpful with this whole process.
Good morning. My name is Ricardo Noyola, and I'm the president and founder of Dreamers Football Club. Dreamers FC was founded in 2015 in hopes to provide an opportunity for every kid in our community a chance to play the sport we love. We began with one team 6 years ago and now serve over 260 kids from the Lincoln and surrounding communities. As a nonprofit soccer club, access to coaching, education, and resources can be difficult at times. We believe that having access to this resource will be valuable for us and the soccer community. I have enjoyed being a part of this effort to address injuries among young athletes and appreciate the opportunity as administrator of youth sports organization to provide input into the development of the educational resources. A critical component to all of this, of course, is the safety of the athlete. That is why I was eager to be a part of this effort when asked to consider participating. The sports injury prevention resource provided through this project make it as simple as possible for coaches, parents to educate themselves on preventing the most common sports injuries among young athletes. I will certainly be encouraging my coaches and families to take advantage of these important resources. Next up is Brian Vanis from Lincoln Sox.
Thank you, Ricardo. Good morning. About a year ago, Brian Baker approached me. He gave me a call and asked if I would be interested in participating in this youth sports injury prevention team. And I instantly said yes. It was a fantastic idea. In the last 10 years or so, youth sports have just exploded. Participation is greater than it's ever been. And a lot of those sports are now expecting almost year-round commitment from their athletes. We've made great strides in the services that we provide to athletes, but there really isn't much existing in the way of regulating the knowledge that the coaches have to identify, prevent, or treat injuries. There's many great organizations and teams to play for, but sometimes we can lose our focus on our core objectives for the sake of winning games. Youth sports shouldn't be about how many 10U or 12U trophies or rings we can collect. But rather about teaching life lessons, developing skill sets for the athletes, and also developing fostering the love of the sport for the athlete. Our end goal should be to help every player reach their full potential and be prepared to make their high school team when they get there. Some of the athletes in these programs will go on to have fantastic careers. They'll be amazing high school athletes, collegiate athletes, and some even professional athletes. While injuries are an unfortunate reality of participating in sports, the last thing we want to do is not recognize the signs of a preventable injury, which could not only make the athlete miss practices and games, but it could also impact their playing career and the ceiling that they hope to reach. I feel strongly that what this injury prevention task force is putting together is it will help the Lincoln Sox educate our coaches to recognize a serious injury or illness and give them the tools to make tough decisions based upon what's best for the athlete. As we gain buy-in across all youth sports organizations, we'll be able to achieve a minimum level of injury prevention and education for the coaches in every sport. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of something that will greatly enhance the experience for our youth athletes, and I'm happy to bring this educational material to our Sox coaches. And with that, I would pass the podium back over to Director Lopez.
Thank you, and thanks again to our entire Safe Kids Sports Injury Task Force for developing these valuable resources and sharing them with our community and our youth sports parents and athletes. You can find the game plan, videos, and tip sheets at safekidslincoln.org and just click on the sports injury prevention. And with that, we'll take any questions you may have.
Director Lopez, how did you and your team kind of identify that this task force was a necessary entity to have in this community? What was that process? Is there any data to reflect that there is a need in this community for a sports injury prevention task force for youth athletes?
I think the data that we had, and I think we best let the physician talk about a little bit about sports medicine, but what we saw in Lincoln was some of the information that was coming out about sports injuries that were occurring, like the concussions and the dehydration. And also, I just want to mention again, you know, our focus is prevention, and we identified certain areas where prevention would really be an appropriate action. It really spurred us on to bring community members together, and it's task force members themselves sharing information, just like the coaches here, talking about what they're seeing. Do you want to hear from them? Yeah.
So part of the data has come from really pulling data from hospitals and what is getting taken care of in the clinics in this Lincoln area. So we were noticing an uptick in some of the overuse injuries and some of the sports preventable injuries, and that's where this task force is really focused. From a sports medicine clinic perspective, just in my own clinic, we are definitely seeing an increase in sports specialization at an earlier age, increases in overuse injuries because they're doing the exact same types of motions over and over again. And some coaches who are really on top of things and recognizing injuries early and getting kids help as early as they can. And other coaches who may be amazing coaches, but are not, they don't know. They don't know what they don't know, and so they need a little bit of guidance. This is an injury that is a soreness that this kid needs to put a bag of ice on this, take a little bit of rest from practice, or this is an injury that needs to see a doctor before it gets worse and becomes more permanent.
How did you identify, obviously it's intuitive, it makes logical sense, but these three factors, the concussions, the overuse, and the dehydration, as items you wanted to tackle, make the public aware of those three specifically, how did those three kind of come to the forefront?
I think for a couple of reasons, we're seeing increases in all three of those issues. Those are three things that we can do something about. Concussions, if they are not identified early and kids are allowed to go back into the game and play, we know that they're more likely to have more long-term issues. They're more likely to have more severe symptoms. And so if we can pick up on things early, they get better faster and they heal completely. So I shouldn't say this pun, but it's a no-brainer. Like, let's make sure people have the information on that one. Overuse and dehydration are other ones that are just so preventable, and also ones that if you don't recognize the signs and symptoms of overuse and dehydration, you can really get a kid into trouble. So those have been our big pushes. Now the coach's game plan, we call it the game plan. The coach's course covers a lot more than just that. We're looking at not just dehydration, but also heat illness and how hot you need to be concerned about having your athletes out practicing. We look at, does your kid have asthma on the team? How do you deal with that if they start having an asthma attack during the game? And so it's pretty all-encompassing, recognizing a fracture, recognizing a sprain, what you need to do, what kids can be pushed, and what kids need to go see a doctor first. So we tried to kind of hit all the bases, but these three behind me are really the three that we wanted, that can lead to really severe problems and can totally be avoided if people recognize what's going on.
I have a question for Ricardo, if that's all right. I'm just wondering, you mentioned providing input to people involved about how this stuff affects, how this stuff manifests itself in your sport. What's just some examples of inputs that you've provided to the health department and the task force pertaining to soccer?
Some of the input I provided, for instance, I'm the president of my soccer club, right? But I also have great relationships with other clubs around town, and also the state agency based out of Omaha. So what I plan on doing is sharing this information with other coaches of the clubs and also the state of Nebraska soccer organization, so they can share the information with everybody else.
And then just finally, these three factors behind you, how do you see that in your sport? I mean, obviously concussions could happen, with headers and things like that. We've seen links to that. Overuse, it makes sense. Dehydration. How do you kind of see those factors involved in your sport?
The overuse helped us a lot when we schedule our training sessions. So we look at what games a player might have for the week, and then the training sessions, and we adapt our training sessions based on how much a player or a youth might be involved in. So if a player had, let's say, a soccer tournament for the weekend, then we might give him or her the day off the next practice. Maybe the next practice is focused more on stretching and recovery versus a full training session that he or she might have had.
And I actually have the same question for Lincoln Sox, if that's all right. So, I mean, think about baseball. I think of overuse, like wearing young kids' arms out, pitching, but you tell me, like, how do those factors behind you, how do they play a role in your sport in terms of considering how to help out young kids and make sure that they can prevent any type of injury that might come from playing baseball?
Sure. Yeah, all three of them are huge impacts on our sport. Concussions obviously have had a lot of exposure in the recent years, but there wasn't a lot of attention to when to hold a kid out. Now basically we're training our coaches, don't take any chances. If there's any question, have them sit and don't have them come back into play until they've been evaluated. Heat illness and like heat stroke, heat exhaustion is a big factor in our sport because all of our games are outside. They're all in the summer. In the middle of July and August, it could be 105 degrees and no air, and we've got kids that are in catcher's gear and kids that are pitching. There's a lot of exertion that goes on throughout the game. So that's a huge. We have a big push to make sure you maintain hydration, but you also have to kind of pick up on those signs because the athletes aren't going to be able to recognize it themselves and tell you there's a problem. So you have to really be cognizant of whether they're focused and they're attentive or have their responses kind of changed. And the other thing I would say is part of the contributions that we've made to the committee would be showing like some of the information that's been given to us by our governing bodies or lack thereof. We've done a lot of great things in certain areas, but not in all areas. And I thought that the injury prevention was a really weak area, at least in baseball and maybe across all sports, that it isn't really, there's information that's given out there, but they aren't necessarily required to take. So it's something that we really wanted to emphasize and say, okay, we need to get our coaches all up to a minimum level of information, minimum level of knowledge so that they can protect their athletes and the parents ultimately feel comfortable with their athletes in our program.
Have you had an injury, with one of your kids that you look back and say that could have been prevented?
Actually, yes. Ironically, my middle son, and this was several years ago, but he pitched a complete game, and it was on turf. It was a manageable number of pitches, but it was in the middle of the summer and it was very hot. And then later we had a game off, and then the next game after that he was catching, and so he had all the gear on, and I could tell an inning or two into the game that he wasn't responding like he normally would. So, we immediately pulled him out of the game, and he sat the rest of the day,
Okay.
This is Margaret Reese from the Journal Marker.
Yeah, Mark.
Hi, this is Margaret. I'm wondering how this information is used. Is it just voluntary, or are you recommending that all coaches go through this, through the training that's available before they coach? I mean, do you want this to become something that all coaches do before they start coaching now?
We do, and I'm going to ask Dr. Stutz to come up and talk a little bit about that.
Thank you for the question, and I did want to, it really tags into something that I wanted to say, and that is, again, going to the Safe Kids website, you'll find several different resources that are, some are just handouts on the specific things that are up here on these posters, and then also that link that we've been talking about to the game plan. One thing about the game plan then is that when the coaches are done with that, there's actually a certificate that they'll get, and they'll be able to provide that to their director of their club or whoever it is that to show that they've actually completed it, and then that they have, as Brian from the Sox said, a minimum kind of base of knowledge. As far as your question, we are obviously recommending that organizations do take a look at this, and that they really do have their coaches go through the course. It's 30 minutes. It's not very long at all. It's free, and like I said, you do get a certificate when you're done. Children's Hospital has done an amazing job putting this together and housing this on their website. It's gone through a lot of review, and not just medical review, but the coaches, as you saw, they looked through that and they said, hey, can you change this language? Can you add something about this? We have this that happens. And so it was really a partnership doing that. So yes, we do recommend that they do it. What we've been doing, it is voluntary. That was one of your questions. Obviously it's voluntary. We can't require anything. But what we've seen though is that even with VCN, that's not here today, but with them and with the Sox and the Dreamers, we've seen that they've seen benefits already just from the information that they've gotten. And the course is just one place where it's all put together in a nice little package. So hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think the other thing, though, too, Margaret, is to emphasize this is a tool that parents can use, too, to educate themselves about what to look for with their own child and how they can help support the coaches in the work that they're doing to make sure our youth are safe as possible out there when they're participating in sports. And I think that's a key. It is a team effort on all sides, and we have to support our coaches when they're advising an action that needs to be taken with an athlete. And I think that's another critical component of this. And this is all, as you heard our fantastic speakers here today, they have the great experience. They're the experts, and they're guiding what are the best practices for us to use. And we're very fortunate that we have this resource for us in our community. So we really want to encourage everyone to use it. And I know that sports are a big part of our youth experience here. And so anything we can do to make it safe and for them to continue to participate is really the best avenue for us.
Are there resources like this available to other states or cities? I think you pointed out that really there's not the kind of regulation for youth sports that there is at the high school or college level, or the medical resources. So I just wondered how unusual this is.
Doctor explain a little bit about it, but remember, Safe Kids is both a state organization and a national organization. But I think we should let our sports medicine expert talk.
So thanks for that question. It is actually very unique to have this comprehensive of a training program available for youth coaches. There are small medical training programs for coaches across the country, but they are often a couple of athletic trainers or a couple of docs from the community who go out and talk to coaches. There are not truly comprehensive online resources like this available. We did a national talk for the Safe Kids nationwide or worldwide. Dr. Stutz and I did on this exact program that we're putting together, and there was a ton of interest from people from all over the country, actually. So it is not a new concept. People have been trying to train youth coaches for years. It's just a new concept in terms of how we're delivering the information, making it a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more accessible. There has been talk about potentially moving this across to the Safe Kids Worldwide to help people from across the country have resources like this. That's probably the next step that we'll be taking, but we're giving it to you guys first.
What's the message to parents? What should they do with this news?
Check out the website. Look and see what the resources are. If there's stuff that speaks to you, stuff that you think that you could get good information from, go through it. If you want to do the full coaches course, go for it. It's 30 minutes. Like I said, it's free. You don't have to, but it's some good data, some good information in there. And like I said, we're just trying to keep all these kids safe. And so if you've got interest in it, there's lots to read on that website.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Again, please go to the website. We're really excited to have this opportunity today and very appreciative of our task force members. Thanks for joining us.